All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim I heard pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quaterwath coming back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. Amen. I was watching, the Elder Apostle Rimlob's, video, as you see right here, called All the Pieces of the Beast System Are in Place. And this is his channel, right? GMS Info Doc Channel 12, right? This is the Elder Apostle Rimlob. Go and be, go and subscribe and be edified through the Spirit. But he was ultimately, which we're going to play it, the first couple minutes or first few minutes of his video. He plays this clip, right, from GMS News Amath, right? Amath meaning truth, right? GMS News Truth. And the Elder Apostle Rimlob, ultimately put the link right here, right? UN Past Beast System globally. So you can go to his channel, again, GMS Info Doc Channel 12, and go and click on this video and find the link. But we're going to play this video, man. This right here, this is something that, starting with the Elder Apostles, of Great Millstone on down, right? That we've been telling y'all, that this was ultimately going to happen. This is ultimately, what was going to take place, right? This Esau Edom is trying to set up a one world government, a one world order, a one world financial system, which is ultimately what a digital system, and it's here, right? Matter of fact, let me grab this in Isaiah, right? Because I do want to go to Daniel's the 3rd chapter, right? Because it ultimately speaks about this happening. This is there's nothing new under the sun, right? Isaiah 42 and verse 9, it says, "Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them." And see, right? You have all these different, Israelite groups out here, man. But the Lord has had it to where only Great Millstone, starting with the Elder Apostles on down, right, and even Great Millstone affiliates, right, we're the only ones that have been telling you and warning you, of what was to come, right? Again, starting with the Elder Apostles, for decades, right? The Elder Apostles been out there 30, 35, 40 plus years, Elder Bishops 20 plus years, some of the elders 10, 15 years plus, 20 years plus, on down, man, right? We've been telling y'all for years that this was ultimately going to take place. And this is thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai, right? The Lord using men, right? Using the prophets, right? To tell you of these things that are to come, before they happen. And see, now it's happening, right? It's irrefutable, right? That Great Millstone, again, starting with the Elder Apostles on down, and even the Great Millstone affiliates, right? That we have the truth, the 100% truth, right? This is heavy, right? This is heavy news, heavy information being pushed out here, man. So without further ado, I want to grab this video that the Elder Apostle Rimlob, ultimately, posted in his video, and then we'll go from there, right? So without further ado,
I'm gonna play this. Fair use, fair use, fair use. I don't own the content to this video. I'm not making any money off of this video. I'm just using it as information, passing it along for educational purposes only. Fair use, fair use, fair use. So listen up.
The UN General Assembly kicked off the Marathon Week of Diplomacy with a summit for the future.
I called for this summit because our world is heading off the rails and we need tough decisions to get back on track.
The signature event, adopted by consensus, a wide-ranging Pact for the Future, a blueprint aimed at ensuring that international institutions can deliver in a world that has changed dramatically since they were created in 1945. Russia, which raised numerous objections to elements of the Pact as the months-long negotiations were wrapping up last week, sought to amend the document moments before its adoption, but failed. The pact has lofty goals for eradicating poverty, ending hunger, and building peaceful and inclusive societies. It also seeks to bridge the digital divide. Now the hard work of implementing it begins.
But our people know instinctively that this will only be talk unless there's a fundamental change in what we do and how we do it, and who is seen and heard in the corridors of decision making.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and I want to do a quick update about a document that got passed by the United Nations this weekend called the Pact of the Future document. It's two parts, one on science and technology and one about the youth and future generations. It is quite egregious, and it was done by a procedure called the silence procedure, which makes it a pact, and if no one objected, it is automatically adopted and put into the record as being completely adopted. This is the World Health Organization's runaround, or end around. Since they were not able to get the World Health Organization treaty passed, they decided to take it to the General Assembly, and it is even more egregious than what the World Health Organization was wanting to get passed. Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. Everyone, it says that this is the power structure, fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared. Have water, food, digital access, flashlights, a way to communicate with family and friends. Now is really the time to get involved and get prepared, because this is what's coming. Our Congress is sitting on its hands. There was a press conference on the 17th about this, and no further action has been taken. So it's up to us to mobilize and to go forward, particularly with your local sheriffs, to get your constitutional sheriffs to say, this isn't going to be allowed in my county. Thank you very much. Take action. We've been talking about the onset of one world order, one world government, one world religion, one world money for a long time. Well, it's no longer coming. It's here.
And there you go. And there you go. Right? Again, everything that we've been, telling y'all through the Spirit, again, starting with the elder apostles, the great millstone on down, right? All of it's happening, right? All of it is taking place, right? And this is nothing new, right? Ecclesiastes 1 and 9. Matter of fact, let's grab that real quick, right? It's Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 9. It says, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done after, and there is no new thing under the sun. So we're seeing this same mentality, right? Going back to the Tower of Babel, right? Going back to Daniel's the 3rd chapter, which we're going to get into, right? Where they're ultimately trying to set up a one world government, a one world order, right? And this time, right? They're using this technology, right? They're making it a digital system, right? And they're ultimately going to require, right, that everyone ultimately receive, this charagma, right, which is the RFID microchip, right, in order to be a part of society. Matter of fact, let's go to Daniel's the 3rd chapter, man. right? And we'll start at the top, right? It says Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold. And we see that, that Trump, right, made his image of gold, right? He made an actual image of himself, right? And made a gold image, right? And then on top of that, you have the America, right, which has instead of the Iron Dome, it has the Golden Dome, right? And this is a Babylon, right? America is Babylon the Great, So this same thing, right? You can ultimately liken this same, what we're reading, right, is ultimately happening, in this time as well. Again, going back to Ecclesiastes 1:9, right? This is Babylon, right? Babylon the Great, man, right? It says Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the province to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, right? Ultimately making it, right, to everyone, where everyone is ultimately going to bow down, right, to this image, right? And that image will be what? The image of the beast, which is not talking about an actual image, right? It's going into the philosophy, right? The way of life, the understanding, right? That is ultimately being pushed out, right? Which we see Babylon, today, right? America, right, has ultimately done to these different nations, It says, then the prince, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, right? And he said what? It said, then, and herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, right? Talking about everyone, right? That at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, right? The harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace, right? Let's go to that Revelations, right, as it applies to today, right? Revelations 13, right, and verse 15, right? Again, going back into that image, right? The image of the beast, right? It says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, right? That the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, right? And we saw, a prelude, right, to what we're about to experience, right, with the C-19, right, where he ultimately made it to where in order for you to participate in society, you had to have that jab, and all the different means that Esau has been trying to get the masses to take it, right? He, was bribing the masses, right? Until, saying, oh, joints for jabs, or, a lottery ticket, a free lottery ticket for jab, or, so on and so forth. He's giving you a whole bunch of bullshit, really, fast food for jabs. You know what I mean? Esau was, really making a mockery of you fucking people, man. But nonetheless, right? He was bribing you people. Right, until it came time to where it was like, okay, well, you have to take it in order to go into grocery stores, in order to, go to, regular venues, or, just to continue with your way of life. Hey, you have to take it, right? It got to that point, and the average person, they understand that, they know that, right? They a lot of these people ended up taking it, and this is exactly the same sentiment, the same thing that we had seen with the C-19. It's going to happen when Esau makes that, the RFID micro chip, mandatory, because that's what's going to happen. It's prophecy, as we're reading right here, verse 16, right? It says, he causeth all, right, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive an MARK in their right hand or in their foreheads, right? Again, and that's going into that RFID micro chip, man. And how convenient, right? I want to say the next day or 2 days later, or 2 days before this video comes out, the elder apostle Remlab, does his video on it, right? 2 days prior to that, you had China ultimately declare, that the Neo brain implant, right? The brain implant called Neo, right, is now being commercialized, right? It's now being made readily available, for the masses, right? And you got millions of people, right? Hundreds of thousands, millions of people, right, that are lining up in China, right, to ultimately receive it, right? As well as America's over here promoting, getting the brain C hip, just as, not necessarily, being a patient, but recreational, right? So this beast system is being pushed, even harder now, and if you don't have it, you're going to be screwed, right? As it says right here, verse 17, it says that no man might buy or sell save he that had the MARK or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So if you don't have this device or you're not bowing down to this system, right? What does it say, right? Jumping up to verse 15, and at the latter end, it says, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, which is again what we see, right, ultimately being said in Daniel's the 3rd chapter, right? Verse 6, Daniel's 3 and 6, it says, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace, right? So again, we're seeing that same sentiment about to ultimately, be pushed. If you don't want to take this charagma, you don't want to worship, this system, this beast system, and you're ultimately going to be killed. And it started with what? Being separated from society, right? Losing, as you mentioned in that video, right? Being locked out of your bank accounts, right? Being locked out of the system, right? Because this system that's ultimately going to be established is a digital system. It's going to have your digital wallet, right, attached to this device, right? It's going to have, your health records. It's going to have, because they're making everything digital, right? They got smart cities, right? These 15-minute smart cities that are being put up, right? Where everything is digital, where Alexa or Siri or Bixby or whatever you want to call it, right? Chat GPT, AI just in general, right, is being implemented into these households, right? So these different sci-fi movies that you watch, where they, got, again, like, what is that movie, Demolition Man, right? With Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, where they were ultimately, again, like they had, that system was talking to them, you know what I mean? They had to, the system was driving for them, so on and so forth. This is what they're trying to implement, and see, they've been putting it in these movies, which we've been telling y'all, it's called predictive programming, right? Where they sit there and they put these in the movie and they tell you and so on and so forth. And then what they do, they steady, through gradualism, right? They steady implement it, right? It's also called what? Revelation of the method. Esau will tell you what he's going to do, and then he does it, right? But see, you people think it's just a movie, or it's just a TV, or, TV show, or if it's just a game, right? Because Esau will put shit in games too, and you people think that's not going to happen, but as time goes on, right, it slowly happens. Esau slowly implements these things, right? And he also does it behind scenes at these different summits, right? You even in that video, she said what? Silent implementing, if you will, right? They do it behind scenes, right? They don't want you people to know, fully know, right, what they're doing when they do it, right? This is why they move like that, right? This whole system is being set up and being pushed right before your eyes. Everything that we've been telling y'all, starting with the elder apostles, the great millstone on down, right? Everything that we've been telling y'all is happening right now. Right? And again, we're coming to that time where if you don't worship this system, you're ultimately going to be fucked, man. But see, those who trust and believe in Yahweh Shemel Shai, we're not going to be worried about it. We're going to, again, continue to trust and believe in Yahweh Shemel Shai. Let me grab this real quick. We'll continue. But this is Jeremiah 15. It's like a Jeremiah 17 and verse 5. It says what? It says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart, meaning his mind, departed from the Lord. Right? You're fucked, man. Right? Because the scriptures talk about, trusting in the shadow of Egypt. Right? That you're ultimately going to be confounded. Right? You're going to be, and we know that modern day Egypt, right, is talking about Babylon the Great. Right? Pursuing the Revelations, the 11th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, it tells you, right, that America, Babylon the Great, is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, right? So the modern day Pharaoh, right, would be Nero, Trump, Nero 47, right? And the Egyptians will be who? The Americans, the modern day Americans. You know, so you trusting in the shadow of Egypt, you trusting in this system and this man, right? And his system that he set up, and you're going to be confounded, man. You know, and you're going to ultimately perish, right? Verse 6, it says, for he shall be like the heath in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, and in the salt land and not inhabited, you know? But hey, here's the flip side, verse 7, right? This is ultimately the elect, right? It says, blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem El Shai is. For he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. That's right, right? Meaning the Lord is going to be with the elect and sustain them and maintain them, right? And protect them in the times of trouble, right? Let's go back to that Daniel's the 3rd chapter, because as we're going to continue to read, right, our forefathers, right, they didn't want to bow down, you know, to this system, you know, they didn't want to bow down to the system or that image, right, which, the, you know, as we're going to read, right, they are symbolic for how the elect are going to be in these times, right, Daniel's 3 and 8, wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews, right, and this is what we're going to see, right, we're going to see more and more people, right, that are ultimately going to buck up, right, and come against us, man. Right, because we're not following that system, right? Our faces are going to be plastered, you know, all over, you know, the news sites and TV and these alternative news sites and whatnot, social media, right? Because we not with this system, man. You know, right? It says, verse 9, they spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Right? Meaning they're going to serve Yahweh Ba'ashem El Shai. Right? They're not going to trust in man and his system and serve his gods. Right? Because at the end of the day, if you ultimately take this charagma, while you ultimately are agreeing to have Esau Edom, right, the self-proclaimed so-called white man, who is just that, a man and not the Most High, right, to set him up as your God, you know, perpetually, you know, and we don't want this devil to rule, man, right? He is ruled. We see how this devil is ruled. He's ruling nothing but wickedness and evil, right? Nothing good has come out of this damn devil, man. Nothing. You know, we look at the state of the earth. We look at the state of the, you know, mindset of these people, the animals, so on and so forth, the air, you know, all the wickedness that he's ultimately is being revealed, that he's continuing to do. Why would you want this devil to continue to rule? No, we don't. Right? So we're not going to bow down to this devil or his system, man, or take his charagma, right? Lord, will we be part of the elect? You know? Continue on, verse 13. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king, right? And again, as we know, that persecution is going to come, right? Let's go to Luke 21 and verse 12, right? It says, but before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. Right? And this is exactly what we're seeing. Right? Reading in Daniel, the 3rd chapter. And this is what's ultimately going to happen. This is a future prophecy, man. Right? That we're reading, you know, in Luke, the 21st chapter. The words of Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is saying this is what's going to happen. You know? And it had happened before. Right? To all the disciples and prophets. You know, and the apostles, man. You know? Where they crucified, you know, Apostle Paul, right? Upside down. You know, what about I think his name's I can't remember. It starts with an A, right? In Revelation 2nd chapter, man, he was ultimately thrown, you know, into, you know, one of those brazen bulls, right, and cooked alive, right, in front of everybody, man. You know, I can't remember his name, man. I have to go back and read read his name, man. But nonetheless, right, this had already happened, but see, it's going to happen again. And this time, and it's going to be far worse. And what does it say? It says, and it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts not to meditate before what ye shall answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. Now let's watch and listen, right, to what, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, right, who their true names, which are called what? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let's see what they what they say. It says Daniel 3:13 says, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Right? It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our power whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. And see, this is the same, mindset that we have to be in, right? Trusting and believing in Yahweh B'Shem El Shah. We read it in Jeremiah, the 17th chapter. Blessed is the man who trusted in the Lord, whose hope the Lord is, And then we read, right, the Lord is ultimately going to continue to sustain us, right? The Lord is going to, protect us, And this is an account of just that happening, right? It says, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So they're saying, hey, even if the Lord doesn't deliver us, right? If we have to die for, our faith in Yahweh B'Shem El Shah, then so be it. We're not going to serve you, right? Whether the Lord delivers us or he doesn't deliver us, we're not going to serve you and worship and bow down to your image, right? And this is going to be the same mindset, right, of the elect, right? What does it say? That they what does it say? Bowed the knee. It's in the New Testament, right? Right here. It says right here in Romans 11:4, it says, but what saith the answer of the Most High unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men that have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Right? So they're not bowing down to serve other gods, right? Because that's ultimately what that's talking about, right? 7,000 men is right, is 7 is a number of completion, right? Let's talk about the elect, right? Starting with the 144,000 that are not going to sit here and bow down to and serve false gods, not going to, right? And again, these guys are, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? They're examples of that, right? And Romans 15:4, the things that are written aforetime are written for our learning, It says, I'll read it again, verse 18, Daniel 3:18. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be, right? And it tells you in what is that? If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the letter. No, it's like the prayer of Azariah, if I'm not mistaken. It says, I think it said it was the flames were like 49. Yeah, right here. Right here. It says, right, because this is a prayer, right? Because again, you got the three, right? The Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. This is prayer of Azariah, one of those three, right? It says that right here, verse 23. It says, and the king's servants that put them in cease not to make the oven hot with rosin, pitch, tow, and small wood, so that the flame streamed forth above the furnace 49 cubits, right there, a big ass fire, you know, a big ass fire, right? And you can ultimately go and read this. This is you know, a heavy account, which we're gonna come back to that, right? We're gonna come back to this, right? Let's go back to Daniel's, right? So it was a big ass fire. 16? No, 18, right? Verse 20, it says, and he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. These men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So they were in the fire now, right? They were in that fire being, you know, ultimately killed, right? Going through, you know, that hell, if you will. And ultimately, you best believe, man, some of us are going to have to be going through that as well. You know, some of us are going to have to be, you know, bound up and ultimately, you know, brought into these, you know, FEMA camps, concentration camps, you know, and possibly have to face, you know, being, you know, put into that guillotine and the Lord ultimately having, you know, or not the Lord, but Esau, you know, going to cut our heads off, you know, Esau starving us, right? Kill, you know, basically threatening our lives, beating us within an inch of our lives, right? You know, taking our family members away from us, you know. Hey, but we have to continue to trust and believe in Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, right? Let me grab this real quick. In Revelations, the 2nd chapter. Revelations 2 and 10, it says, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer, right? Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, right? It's a trial of our faith, right? A trial of our faith, right? The ultimate test, man. As long as we remain faithful, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai will deliver us, man. We will receive, you know, a righteous reward, a righteous blessing, right? It says, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. And 10 is also a number of completion, right? So it could be 5 minutes. It could be 2 weeks. Could be 2 days, right? But it says right here, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life, you know? So as long as we remain faithful, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, well, you know, will give us, you know, allow us to receive the victory, man. That's salvation, right? What does it say in Revelations 3 and 10, right? It says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, meaning remain faithful, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. So this is, again, it's going to be a trial of everyone's faith. You know, let's go back to that Daniel's. It says, right here. It says right here, it says, right here, verse 23 again. It says, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the son of the Most High. Now let's go back to that prayer of Azariah, right? 1, and I think it's like 20. Right here, continue on, verse 24. Verse 25, it says, verse 24 again, so that the flame streamed forth above the furnace 49 cubits, and it passed through and burned those Chaldeans it found about the furnace, those men that threw them in, right? Again, going into, you know, the comparing the accounts, right? This is one of those men, right, that were cast into that fire. It says, but the angel of the Lord, talking about Yahweh Shai, came down into the oven together with Azarias and his fellows, and smote the flame of the fire out of the oven, and made the midst of the furnace as it had been a moist whistling wind, so that the fire touched them not at all, neither hurt nor troubled them. Right? So the Lord ultimately made it to where they were protected. Right? These are the different miracles that the Lord is ultimately going to do for those who trust and believe in him. You know, so when it comes time when Esau wants to sit there and make this charagma mandatory, and wants to make it to where we're not able to go and buy food, or we're not able to work, we're not able to get into this, that, and the third, because we don't have that MARK, and you best believe the Lord is going to do miracles for us. Right? Isaiah the 65th chapter, right? Blessed is my servant, right? For they shall eat, right? My servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. My servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Those servants is going into the elect, right? The Lord's going to make sure that we are continually sustained and maintained, right? In whatever situation it may be. And even if we have to be, put to death, right? Being martyrs for Yahweh Bashim El Shai, this truth, this testimony. And the Lord's going to make it to where we're going to be like Stephen, right? In Acts, in the book of Acts, right? We're not feeling that persecution, right? But we're just looking up and we seeing Yahweh Shai on the right hand of the Heavenly Father, man. And who knows, man? The Lord might have it to where that happens, and he still, delivers us, man. Gives us spiritual power, or has an angel come and break, the guillotine as it's coming down, or whatever. Stop the bullets midair, right? Whatever it may be. It says, I'll continue to read. It says, verse 27, and had made the midst of the furnace as it had been a moist whistling wind, so that the fire touched them not at all, neither hurt nor troubled them. Then the three, as out of one mouth, praised, glorified, and blessed the Most High in the furnace, saying, Blessed art thou, O Lord Yahweh, Bashim El Shai, of our power of our fathers, and to be praised and exalted above all forever. That's right. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be praising the Lord, man. It says, verse 27, Daniel 3 and 27, it says, and the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors being gathered together saw these men, upon whose body the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the Most High, power of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own power. And again, this is going to be the elect, right? The elect of the nation of Israel that are ultimately going to remain faithful to Yahweh Bashim El Shai to the end, and will be delivered, man. Right? It says, therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the power of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their horses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other power that can deliver after this sort. And that's ultimately what's going to be, right? Esau's going to ultimately try to, set up his own God. Esau's going to try to, make it to where everybody serves him and his false God, where we're ultimately making him their God, and then the Lord is going to step in, right? And then the Lord's going to get that glorification. The Lord is going to be exalted as the only true power in the earth, and all nations are going to serve Yahweh Bashim El Shai, right? The Israelites, they're going to serve the Israelites, right? And keep the law, statutes, commandments of Yahweh Bashim El Shai. Again, glorifying and exalting the names of Yahweh Bashim El Shai, And this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to take place, man. This is prophecy, right? This is the truth, right? Whether you like it or not, whether they hear or forbear, hey, this is exactly what's going to take place in the earth, But I just wanted to speak on that, man. The spirit was kind of heavy, right? I had seen that, with the elder apostle Rimlob, ultimately posted. And hey, man, Esau is moving quick, right? Yahweh Bashim El Shai is having this devil move quick, with pushing out this MO to the TB system, this digital system, man. So stay prayed up, stay faithful to Yahweh Bashim El Shai, man. Hey, we're getting out of here soon. So with that, Lord wills, edifying, Lord will, straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechak, Wadash, double honor, say the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders, great millstone. Till next time, I say shalom.